In case you couldn't tell by the title, thumbnail, and the intro title, today I'm gonna try to convince you that the movie Watchmen is in the DC Extended Universe. And here are my reasons. If I would have told you a little over a year ago that Watchmen was going to be integrated into the main DC universe, you would have probably thought I was delusional, crazy, out of my mind. Nobody saw it coming, but that's exactly what happened last year. When the Rebirth special by Geoff Johns was released, something literally no one thought would possibly ever happen was suddenly, well, happening. Thanks to Geoff Johns, the characters from Watchmen were being integrated into the main DC universe. So who's to say the same thing can't happen for the DCEU? Speaking of Geoff Johns, aside from being the man responsible for bringing Watchmen to the DC universe, or rather multiverse we all know and love, he's going to be a producer or executive producer in most of the movies that have been announced for the DCEU so far. And he was an executive producer in all the movies since Batman v Superman, which was the movie that really kicked off the DCEU. On top of all that, he's co-writing the story for the upcoming Aquaman and Green Lantern Corps films, and he's writing the script for the Wonder Woman sequel. He was also writing the screenplay for the Batman solo film, but the new director Matt Reeves decided to rewrite the script because he wanted his own trilogy. And all of that is kind of minor stuff when you consider that Geoff Johns is the co-runner of the DCEU and co-chairman of DC Films, which means he has a pretty big hand in the DCEU. And seeing that, it could be possible that he's steering the DCEU in the same direction that he's taking the comics right now. You might love or hate his movies.
What the f*** do you mean love or hate my movies? Everybody loves my movies.
Zack, how the hell did you get in my house? I don't know what that was all about. But love or hate his movies, I think we can all agree that even if he doesn't come back, Zack Snyder was the person in charge of the DCU at least up until Justice League. So is it a coincidence that he also directed Watchmen? Maybe. But you know, it could also not be a coincidence. In Batman v Superman, you might recognize the iconic line, "Who watches the Watchmen?" not once, but twice. Once in a news article, and again in the fight scene between Batman and Superman. While those are direct references to Watchmen, as the same line can be spotted countless times in the graphic novel and the movie, there are a few not so direct references, like Lex Luthor's prison number letters? Number letters? Whatever the f*** you call this. TK-421 is a reference to this one stormtrooper, and you could pretty much say that stormtroopers are the Watchmen of Star Wars. For those who don't know, the people from Watchmen were not called the Watchmen. Watchmen refers to the people that watch over a city or a town or whatever. They're the police, if you will. So, the crime busters are Watchmen as much as stormtroopers are Watchmen. You can also not so directly spot a smiley face in the fight scene between Batman and Superman, and the fight scene between Zod and Superman in Man of Steel, a reference to the comedian's infamous button. In both the Watchmen movie and comic, Rorschach's last journal entry is on November the 1st, during what is known by some cultures, including my homeboys, as the Day of the Dead. In Batman v Superman, they also mention the Day of the Dead. Remember Lex Luthor's party? And the scene right after where Superman saves like one girl from a building that was on fire and then a bunch of Mexicans start trying to touch him for some reason? Well, all of that happened during the Day of the Dead. I have to say, I don't know how this helps prove that Watchmen is in the DCEU, but I thought it was worth mentioning because maybe you see a connection that I can't. Throughout Watchmen, Rorschach keeps up with a journal, so in a way, you could call him a journalist. Do you know who else is a journalist? I only made that stupid, meaningless connection because I wanted to talk about the Flash scene in Batman v Superman. Not because it'll help prove my Watchmen theory, but because I want to disprove all the people that think the DCEU is following a path towards the Injustice storyline. Everyone and their mothers are interpreting what the Flash said as if she's the key means that she's the key to pretty much controlling Superman, or the key to Superman going evil. But if you think about it, this doesn't really make much sense. Why would that matter to Batman? How would any of that make sense to him? Not even the world's greatest detective could make sense of something that requires knowledge of the future or of an alternate reality. What the Flash said has to be something that Batman will be able to decipher before it's too late. In the case of the Injustice theory, it would be too late because Batman would realize what the Flash said after someone already used or killed Lois to manipulate Superman. Everyone also keeps saying that when the Flash said fear him, he was talking about Superman, because Superman goes evil in Injustice, so Batman should watch out for that and he should fear Superman. And if I'm right about what I previously said, then this wouldn't be the case because there is no reason to be afraid of Superman. But even if I was wrong, things wouldn't add up. Because if Batman should fear him, then why did Batman and Superman end up being besties by the end of the movie? Batman couldn't be always right about him if he was friends with Superman at one point. Now, I do have my own theory as to what the Flash meant by all this, but right now I just wanted to disprove the Injustice theory. So I'll leave my theory for another video in order to get back on track to what this video is about.
Remember the 5th of November.
Actually, forget about the 5th and just focus on November. If you want to remember a date though, focus on the 15th because that's the day that Justice League comes out. But do you know what also comes out in November? That's right, Geoff Johns' very own Doomsday Clock, which just so happens to be the continuation of the Watchmen mystery started in the DC Rebirth special and continued in the Button storyline by Tom King and Joshua Williamson. Now, this of course could just be a coincidence and Justice League could have nothing to do with Doomsday Clock or Watchmen, but maybe, just maybe, Justice League has a solid direct reference to Watchmen, like a direct quote from Watchmen, or someone making a reference to time, or perhaps they even show a certain blue hand picking up a certain comedian's button while saying a quote from Watchmen. In the movie Watchmen, there's this one scene where Laurie and Dan are having dinner, and Laurie mentions this.
I don't know what to think. I mean, it's all quantum mechanics and parallel realities with him. I never even know what universe he's actually seeing.
And this wasn't even mentioned in the comic, so why would Zack Snyder add this? Maybe he wanted to establish that Dr. Manhattan was aware of parallel universes so that he could later bring him onto one of those parallel universes. Even in the DCEU's latest film, Wonder Woman, I noticed 3 possible connections to Watchmen. The first one being Steve Trevor's watch. If you know anything about Watchmen, you'll probably know that watches and clocks and time in general are a recurring theme. Heck, it has a clock on the graphic novel Spine, the very first page, and the first page of every chapter. Hell, it even has the word watch in its name. The second reference is a bit more subtle. In the movie, the main villain is Ares, the god of war, and if you know anything about Roman mythology, you'll know that the Roman god of war is Mars. And in Watchmen, Dr. Manhattan goes to Mars and, you know, does some stuff. The last connection is that both Wonder Woman and Watchmen had themes about how human nature is savage and how basically humans will try to kill each other given the opportunity. In Watchmen, Adrian straight up says this:
humanity's savage nature will inevitably lead to global annihilation.
And in Wonder Woman, Steve Trevor tries to convince Diana that there is no Ares and that humans are just bad sometimes. And then Ares kind of says the same thing during his monologue. Except he doesn't say that there is no Ares, because, you know, he's Ares, so... I saved this for my next to last point because even if all the setup and proof that I've given so far happen to be wrong, they could start heading towards a Watchmen-infused future with the recently announced Flashpoint movie. For those unfamiliar with Flashpoint, in a shell nut, the Flash went back in time to save his mother and created a world that was significantly different and on the brink of chaos. So he went back in time to fix that, and ended up rebooting the whole DC universe into what is now known as the New 52. Or so everyone thought until it was revealed in the Rebirth special that Dr. Manhattan was actually the one responsible for all the changes in the DC universe. So aside from using it to potentially fix things that people don't like or are wrong about the DCEU, they could use Flashpoint to set the foundation for the Watchmen mystery in the DCEU. Now you might be thinking,
But what about Jeffrey Dean Morgan? He acted as comedian in Watchmen and Thomas Wayne in Batman v Superman, so Watchmen cannot be part of DCEU.
to which I say, the comedian literally dies in the opening scene of Watchmen, so chances of seeing him if Watchmen does come over to the DCEU are less than the chances of Rorschach breaking into Night Owl's house and not eating his beans.
Help myself to some beans.
To which you might then say,
But what about Night Owl and Sue Spectre? They not die in Watchmen, but also have role in DCUE.
to which I say, both of them are literally cameo voices in Batman v Superman. F***ing voices. You don't see them even once. Out of everything I've said, this final piece of evidence is really the one that seals the deal. Remember the TK in Luthor's prison suit? The one I said was a reference to a stormtrooper? Well, there's a second hidden reference right there. TK also stands for Tom King. If you don't believe me, it's no coincidence that Tom King has an extra TK at the end of his Twitter handle, and it's no coincidence that he also was one of the two people that wrote the Button story arc. Not only that, but if you go look at what he posted on May 25th, there's solid evidence that this is happening. That's right. Tom King posted a picture of Batfleck holding up the comedian's button. And if that doesn't convince you that Watchmen is in the DCEU, nothing will until you see it for yourself on the big screen.